Nina learned quickly that night shift wasn't just a schedule, it was a different version of the building. By day, the assisted living facility felt busy in a controlled, polite way. Carts rolling down corridors, TVs murmuring behind doors, visiting hours filling the lobby with perfume and paper gift bags. After midnight, the place became a long, bright tunnel of stillness, lit by ceiling panels that never fully dimmed. The quiet wasn't empty. It was packed tight with mechanical sounds, ice machines cycling, HVAC sighing, elevator cables settling, and with the sense that every closed door contained a separate life breathing in the dark. Nina worked as a night CNA because it paid better and because she had a talent for staying calm when other people fell apart. She was in her late 20s, sturdy, practical, the kind of person who trusted routines more than instincts. Routines were measurable. Instincts were embarrassing if they turned out wrong. Tonight was supposed to be simple. 2 aides on the floor, Nina and an older co-worker named Beth, 1 nurse on duty in the med room. A building full of residents asleep or drifting in and out of it, and a list of checks to be done every hour. At 1 a.m., Nina began her rounds. She pushed the linen cart down the hallway, scanning door labels, checking on residents who needed repositioning, changing a damp bed pad here, adjusting an oxygen tube there. The hall smelled faintly of detergent, skin lotion, and the powdery softness of clean towels. It was the smell of care packaged into predictable products. The first round was normal. The second round was normal. The third round started to feel wrong in small ways Nina couldn't immediately name. The lobby clock seemed louder. The elevator took longer to settle after closing. The HVAC system cycled in shorter bursts, like it couldn't maintain a steady breath. At 3:07 a.m., Nina reached the end of the east wing, where a fire door separated the resident hall from the service corridor that led to laundry and storage. That door was always shut. It had a crash bar and an alarm sticker, and a metal plate scuffed by carts. Nina never used it during rounds. There was no reason. But tonight it was ajar. Only an inch, maybe 2, just enough to show a thin wedge of darkness beyond. The service corridor was normally lit by motion sensors. If the door was open, the sensor should have triggered. The corridor should have been bright. It wasn't. Nina stopped with one hand on the linen cart handle. Her stomach tightened. Open doors were paperwork. Open doors were risk. Open doors meant someone had been careless, or someone had been there. She leaned forward slightly and listened. The facility's night sounds continued, steady and ordinary. No footsteps, no voices, no distant squeak of a cart, just the constant hum of the building. Nina told herself Beth might have opened it to grab supplies and forgotten to shut it. Beth was older, sometimes distracted. Nina could picture her doing it, and that picture was comforting because it turned the problem into a human error. Nina nudged the door closed with her foot, careful not to set off the alarm by pushing too hard. The door clicked shut, the latch catching. She exhaled slowly, tension easing. Then she saw the floor. A faint, wet streak ran from the base of the door into the resident hallway, thin and irregular like something had been dragged across the tile. It wasn't a puddle. It wasn't a spill. It looked like a smear left by something damp, moving slowly. Nina crouched and touched the edge of the streak with a gloved finger. The moisture was cool and slightly sticky, not like water from the mop sink. It smelled faintly metallic, like a coin held too long. Nina stood quickly and pushed the linen cart forward, forcing herself to continue. She didn't want to dwell on a wet streak. She didn't want to invent a story around it. She wanted to finish the round and return to the med room where the nurse was, where the lights were brighter and the walls felt thicker. At 3:15 a.m., she passed room 214, a resident who always slept with the TV on low and the door cracked. Nina glanced in out of habit. The TV was off. The room was darker than usual. Nina paused. The resident's care plan noted anxiety at night. The TV was used to provide comfort. It being off might mean the resident woke and turned it off, or the power strip failed, or someone unplugged it. Nina pushed the door open a fraction more and listened. The resident's breathing was audible, slow and heavy. Asleep. Nina reached in and felt along the wall for the TV remote. Her fingertips brushed it on the dresser. She didn't turn the TV on. She didn't want the sound to wake anyone. She only wanted to understand why it was off. Her fingers found the power button on the set. The TV turned on, but the screen didn't show a channel. It showed a security camera view, a grainy black and white feed of the facility's east service corridor, the one behind the fire door. Nina froze, remote in hand. The facility TVs weren't connected to security. Residents didn't have access to those feeds. The security system was in the locked office near the lobby. On the screen, the corridor sat empty, lit only by emergency glow. At the far end, the laundry door was shut. The mop sink area was dark. Then something moved. Not a person walking upright. Something low near the floor, sliding across the corridor like a shadow dragged by an unseen hand. It passed through the camera's range slowly, crossing from left to right. Nina couldn't make out shape, only motion and density. The smear of darkness moved with steady purpose, then vanished into the deeper part of the corridor outside the camera's view. Nina's mouth went dry. The TV speaker produced a faint crackle, like the feed carried sound too. A soft scrape, then a pause, then another scrape, rhythmic, as if something pulled itself along with effort. Nina shut the TV off immediately. The resident's breathing remained steady. No wakefulness, no reaction. The room stayed dark. Nina backed out and closed the door. She stood in the hallway, heart hammering, forcing herself not to run. Running made noise. Noise woke residents. Noise turned the night into chaos. She couldn't allow chaos. She pushed her linen cart toward the med room faster than usual, eyes scanning every door seam, every stretch of hallway. The overhead lights seemed colder now, their brightness harsh rather than neutral. When Nina reached the med room, the nurse wasn't inside. That was unusual. The nurse usually stayed near the meds and charting, leaving only for scheduled checks. Nina stepped in and found the computer screen on, charting open. A coffee cup sat near the keyboard. The chair was pulled back as if someone had risen quickly. Nina called softly for the nurse. No answer. She moved into the adjacent supply closet where the nurse sometimes stored controlled items. The closet was empty. Nina's throat tightened. She turned back toward the hallway and saw Beth at the far end near the lobby, walking toward her slowly with a rigid posture. Beth's face looked pale under the lights. Her eyes were wide and fixed. Beth held something in her hand, the fire door keycard lanyard that only maintenance carried. Nina stopped in the medroom doorway. The two women stared at each other across the corridor. Beth lifted the lanyard slightly, as if showing proof of something, and shook her head once. Small, tight, warning. Nina's pulse hammered. She moved toward Beth, pushing the linen cart aside. Beth reached Nina and grabbed her wrist, grip strong despite her age. Beth didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her silence felt like law. Beth guided Nina toward the lobby desk, where the security monitor station sat behind a locked cabinet. The cabinet door was open now. The monitor screen glowed, showing multiple feeds. Nina's eyes locked on the East Service corridor feed. The corridor was no longer dark. Every motion sensor light in it was on, all at once, creating a harsh illuminated tunnel. And in the center of that tunnel, directly under the camera, something sat on the floor. A linen cart. Not Nina's cart, not the facility's spare. A different one, older, rusted, with a bent handle. It looked like it belonged to another era of the building, the kind of cart that should have been scrapped years ago. The cart's wheels were wet. A faint trail led behind it, a shiny smear across the corridor floor. Nina stared, unable to breathe. Then the cart moved. It rolled forward an inch, 2 inches. Slow, steady, no hand on the handle. The motion stopped under the camera, perfectly centered like it was presenting itself. Beth's grip tightened on Nina's wrist. On the monitor, a door at the far end of the corridor opened. Laundry room door, swinging inward with controlled slowness. Darkness filled the doorway, deeper than the corridor shadows. A shape shifted in that darkness, low and heavy, as if something crouched just beyond the threshold. The linen cart on screen rolled again, beginning a slow journey toward the fire door that Nina had found ajar earlier. Nina's mind assembled the sequence like a ledger. Fire door open, wet smear into resident hall, security feed appearing on a resident's TV, nurse missing. A second cart moving in the service corridor, as if performing a fourth round of its own. Nina forced herself to move, to do something. She reached for the phone on the lobby desk and lifted the receiver. Dead tone. Beth's eyes flicked toward the front doors. The glass entrance looked normal, but the automatic lock indicator light above it was red. Secured. It shouldn't be red until the alarm was armed. The building had decided the night was closed. On the monitor, the linen cart reached the fire door and stopped. The camera view showed the crash bar from the corridor side. The bar depressed slightly, as if pushed. The fire door didn't open yet. The crash bar depressed again, harder. Nina's breath came in tight pulls. The bar depressed a third time, and then the latch gave. The fire door in the corridor swung inward, not into the service corridor, into the resident hallway. The camera feed stuttered, switching to the hallway camera near the door. Nina saw it clearly now. The door opening, the dark wedge widening, the smear on the tile catching light, and something low slid through the gap, dragging wetness behind it as it entered the resident hall with slow patience. Nina's body went rigid as the hallway camera feed held on the fire door area, the lens catching the moment the darkness slid through, like something poured rather than walked. The smear behind it glistened under the corridor lights, too thin to be a spill and too consistent to be random. Beth kept Nina's wrist locked in her grip, pulling her away from the monitor station and back behind the lobby desk, where the counter created a low barrier. The building's quiet tightened, as if even the HVAC had lowered its voice to listen. Nina tried the phone again, lifting the receiver and pressing the cradle switch as if she could force the line back to life. The dead tone remained flat and absolute. The cell phone in her scrub pocket showed no service, not even a flicker, despite the facility usually having decent coverage. On the monitor, the hallway camera near the fire door caught the movement continuing, slow, patient, and low to the ground. It didn't rush, it didn't hesitate. It traveled along the wall the way a spill would, except it had direction. It was heading toward the first room on the east wing, room 201. Nina's mind raced through the resident list. Someone in 201 required oxygen at night. Someone who couldn't move quickly. Someone who couldn't lock a door. Beth's eyes were fixed on the screen, wide and wet, but her face held a kind of determined stillness. She reached under the desk and pulled out the heavy binder where incident forms were kept. The binder was thick enough to use as a weapon, ridiculous and yet comforting in its weight. Nina grabbed the nearest object that wasn't bolted down, the lobby desk's metal clipboard stand, a flat, heavy thing with sharp corners. The east hallway camera showed the door to 201 still shut. The corridor nightlights cast a dull line under it. Then the line under the door darkened, not the whole gap at once. A slow crawl from one side to the other, as if something pressed close to the base, blocking light. The handle to 201 didn't turn. The door didn't rattle. Instead, the door's bottom edge bowed inward slightly, the way cheap wood flexed under pressure. The flex happened in pulses. Press, relax, press, like someone testing how much give it had without making noise. Nina's breathing went shallow. The facility's resident doors were meant to be sturdy, but they weren't reinforced. They were built for privacy, not for resisting force. The pressure stopped. The dark line under the door remained. A moment later, the hall camera feed stuttered and switched to another view. Camera outside 201, now closer, zoomed slightly, as if the system had decided this was the important scene. In that tighter frame, Nina saw something that made her stomach twist. The wetness wasn't just on the floor, it had spread onto the baseboard, thin streaks climbing an inch, as if whatever moved had brushed upward against the wall while passing. Beth's grip on Nina's wrist tightened hard enough to hurt. Nina didn't pull away. Pain was proof this was real. A new motion appeared at the far end of the east wing on the camera feed, the linen cart Nina had been pushing earlier. Not the old rusted one. Nina's cart, recognizable by a torn corner of its top liner and a red marker stain on the lower shelf. It rolled into view from the direction of the nurse's station. Nina hadn't left it there. She had shoved it aside near the med room. The cart rolled slowly toward the fire door, wheels turning with a faint shimmer at the rims, like they were damp. It stopped, centered in the hallway, facing the lobby, as if placed intentionally as a second barrier to movement. Beth's eyes flicked away from the monitors and toward the actual east hallway, visible beyond the lobby through a long, straight corridor of light. Nothing moved in the real hallway. No cart, no smear, only the ordinary-looking space that now felt like a lie. Nina's attention snapped back to the screens. The camera outside 201 showed the door holding. The pressure at the bottom edge returned, heavier now. The door bowed inward more noticeably, the gap widening slightly at the latch side. The resident inside didn't stir. Nina's mind screamed to run down the hall, to brace the door, to drag the resident out. But Beth held her back, eyes hard now, with a warning that didn't need words. If Nina went alone into that hallway, she'd be in the same corridor the building had already sealed. The speakers in the lobby ceiling clicked, not the intercom system, a softer system, the kind used for gentle overnight announcements about quiet hours. A low chime sounded once, then a flat tone, then silence. The facility's hallway lights flickered, and for the briefest moment the monitor feed washed out, turning bright and useless. When it returned, the camera outside 201 showed the door open. Not kicked open, not yanked. open as if someone had simply turned the knob and swung it inward. The room beyond was pitch dark, far darker than it should have been. Night lights inside resident rooms usually glowed. Even a TV standby light would show. This was empty darkness swallowing the doorway. The wet smear spread across the threshold. Then the camera glitched again. 2 frames of static, then back. On the floor just inside the doorway, a shape moved, low and dense, passing into the room. Nina's pulse hammered. Her grip on the clipboard stand tightened until her fingers cramped. Beth yanked Nina farther behind the desk and reached for the security cabinet's keys. The cabinet doors weren't meant to lock from the inside, but Beth shoved them closed anyway, creating another barrier between themselves and the hallway. Nina realized Beth wasn't trying to protect the monitors. Beth was trying to protect them from whatever could use the building's systems. A soft thud sounded from deeper in the facility. Not from the lobby, not from the east hallway, from above. Nina's eyes lifted to the ceiling tiles, as if she could see through them. Assisted living buildings had drop ceilings full of ducts and wiring. There were access points. There were places sound traveled. Another thud followed, then a slow dragging noise overhead, faint but steady, as if something moved along the ceiling grid. Beth's gaze snapped to the lobby camera feed. The lobby camera showed the ceiling above the desk area. Smooth tiles, light fixtures, nothing moving. Then one ceiling tile shifted. It didn't fall. It slid a fraction of an inch, then stopped, like it had been nudged from above by a deliberate hand. Nina backed away from the desk, breath tight. Beth moved with her, both women pressing into the narrow space between the counter and the wall. The tile shifted again, a little more this time, exposing a thin black seam. A bead of moisture formed at the seam and dropped to the floor with a quiet tick. Then another drop. The drops weren't water clear. They were slightly dark, as if mixed with something. Nina's stomach turned. Beth's hand found the panic button panel under the desk, meant to silently alert emergency services if a visitor became violent. Beth pressed it repeatedly, hard, as if force could compensate for the building's refusal to connect to the outside world. Nothing responded. No confirmation light. No beep. The dragging overhead moved closer. Nina watched the seam in the ceiling tile widen slightly. Then the tile stopped moving. The dragging noise ceased. For a breathless second, the lobby was still enough that Nina could hear her own heartbeat. The east hallway camera feed switched again. Now it showed the nurse's station on the east wing. Empty chairs, dim monitors, a rolling desk lamp left on. The camera angle included the medroom door. The medroom door stood open. Inside, the computer monitor glowed. A shape was hunched at the desk. Nina's throat tightened. The shape didn't look like the nurse. It wasn't upright. It didn't have shoulders in the right place. It seemed to fold over the chair in a way that made Nina's mind try and fail to name it. The camera zoomed slightly, automatic tracking. The shape lifted, not standing, rising like liquid pulling up from a surface. For a split second, the feed sharpened, and Nina saw the nurse's coffee cup on the desk tip over on its own, spilling dark liquid across papers. The liquid spread in thin lines, almost like it was being directed. Then the camera cut to static. Beth's grip on Nina's forearm tightened again, and Beth pulled Nina toward the back of the lobby, where a staff-only corridor led to an emergency stairwell. That corridor door should have been locked by badge, but Beth shoved it and it swung open, as if the building wanted them to take that path. Nina didn't trust that invitation. She grabbed Beth's sleeve and pulled her the opposite direction, toward the front doors. The front doors were locked, but at least they led to glass, to visibility, to the parking lot lights that might attract attention. They reached the entry vestibule. The outer doors were locked, but the inner doors opened into the vestibule, creating a small glass box between building and lot. Nina shoved through the inner doors and stumbled into the vestibule. The parking lot outside was empty under harsh lamps. No cars, no headlights, no movement. Then Nina saw something on the glass at floor level. A wet streak, thin and irregular, running along the bottom edge of the vestibule door, as if moisture had already been here, had already tested this boundary. Beth pressed her palm to the outer door glass and stared out into the lot. Nina turned back toward the lobby. The lobby lights dimmed suddenly, as if someone had lowered a switch. The building's hum deepened, and on the other side of the inner vestibule door, a shadow pooled low on the tile, gathering near the threshold without fully crossing. Nina grabbed the door handle and yanked it shut, locking the vestibule from the lobby side with the simple latch used during the day to keep drafts out. It clicked. The shadow on the lobby tile remained. It didn't surge forward. It didn't slam the glass. It waited, the way it had waited at 2:01. Nina and Beth stood in the vestibule, trapped between locked outer doors and a locked inner barrier, watching the darkness hold position on the other side of glass that suddenly felt too thin. Then the fire alarm strobe in the lobby flashed once, not accompanied by a siren, just a single pulse of red, and the outer doors in the vestibule unlocked with a soft mechanical click, as if the building had decided to release them, on its own terms, at the moment it chose. Nina didn't waste the opening. She yanked the outer door open and sprinted into the parking lot, dragging Beth with her, both women running toward the nearest streetlight and the edge of the property where the road began. Behind them, the facility's vestibule door swung shut on its own. From inside, through the glass, Nina saw the shadow spread across the lobby tile and flow toward the vestibule, arriving exactly where they had stood moments earlier. Nina didn't look back after that. She kept running until her lungs burned, and her phone finally caught a signal near the main road. She called for help, not caring how her voice sounded. When responders arrived, they found the facility's front doors secured again, alarm system inexplicably armed, and the lobby empty. Room 201 was open. The resident inside was unharmed but unusually sedated, as if they'd slept through a thunderstorm. The nurse on duty was found in the laundry room alive, locked inside a rolling hamper cage, with the keyring sitting on the floor outside the bars. No one could explain how the cage door had been secured from the outside without leaving a visible person on camera. Nina never worked another night in that building. Gavin's night shift started at 10:30 p.m. when the downtown office tower stopped being a place people worked and became a place people left behind. He was a custodian for a property management company that handled 3 buildings on the same block. 2 were older, low-rise offices with predictable mess. The third was newer, glass and steel, 21 floors, sleek lobby, security desk that was mostly decorative after hours. Gavin got paid extra for the tower because it required multiple stairwell checks, elevator wipe-downs, and a strict log. Every floor cleaned, every restroom inspected, every supply room locked when finished. Gavin liked logs. Logs created proof. Tonight, the building felt different before he even stepped inside. The revolving door moved too smoothly, as if recently oiled, and the lobby air was colder than usual. The security guard, normally half asleep behind the desk, wasn't present. The desk chair was pushed in. The monitor array was on, but showing only a blue no-feed screen across several camera tiles. Gavin signed the entry sheet anyway. Habit. Proof. He wheeled his cart across the marble lobby, mop bucket, trash liners, spray bottles, cloth bundles, and headed for the service elevator. The elevator opened immediately, already waiting. Doors parted like someone had summoned it seconds before. Gavin stepped in and pressed 8, where the first assigned offices were. The elevator didn't move. The panel lights flickered, then stabilized, and the display above the door showed 8 as selected. The doors stayed open. Gavin pressed again. Nothing. Then, slowly, the doors began to close without the usual chime, stopping halfway, reopening, then closing again in short stutters like the system couldn't commit. Gavin backed out, unsettled, and chose the stairwell instead. Stairs were honest. They didn't pretend. He pushed the stairwell door open and started up. The stairwell was lit by harsh fluorescent strips. His footsteps echoed in concrete. The air smelled of dust and paint and faint metal, the scent of a space meant for emergencies, not daily travel. He reached floor 8 and opened the stairwell door into the hallway. The office corridor was dark except for emergency lighting, a pale line along the baseboards. Motion sensors should have triggered overhead lights. They didn't. Gavin stepped in anyway, cartwheels squeaking softly. The hallway smelled faintly of citrus cleaner, but underneath it was something else. Dampness like old carpet padding. He moved toward the first office suite and swiped his keycard. The door unlocked. He entered and flipped the wall switch. Nothing happened. The overhead lights remained off. Gavin pulled out his phone and used the flashlight function, the beam creating a narrow tunnel of visibility. He emptied trash bins first, the way he always did. He moved quietly, not out of fear but out of respect for sleeping buildings. As he worked, he noticed the sound of his trash liner being opened didn't echo the way it should. The room seemed to absorb sound, swallowing it before it could bounce back. Gavin stepped into the hallway again and saw something that didn't belong, a fresh smear on the carpet runner, thin and glossy, leading from the elevator bank toward the stairwell door. The smear looked like wet mop residue, except Gavin hadn't mopped yet, and it wasn't drying. He crouched and touched the edge of it with a gloved finger. It was slick, cool, and slightly sticky. The smell was faintly metallic. Gavin stood quickly and looked toward the elevator bank at the far end. The elevator call button's ring light was on, glowing softly. The elevator doors were open. He hadn't called it. Gavin's pulse ticked upward, not into panic yet, but into alertness. He pushed his cart slowly toward the elevators, phone light aimed ahead. The open elevator looked like a dark rectangle in the wall, its interior lights off. The cab beyond was black. At the elevator threshold, Gavin stopped. On the elevator floor, just inside the cab, lay a clipboard. Not his clipboard, not the building's visitor clipboard. A janitorial log clipboard with a printed sheet clipped to it. Edges clean, paper bright. The sheet was titled Night Shift Checklist. Gavin stared. That was the exact name of the form he used, but his clipboard was on his cart back near the office suite. He didn't step into the elevator. He leaned forward and used his phone light to read the sheet. The checklist lines were already filled in, not with check marks, with times. Floor 1, 11:02, Floor 2, 11:11, Floor 3, 11:19, and so on. The list continued down the page, all the way through Floor 21, each with a time beside it as if someone had already cleaned the entire tower in a single rapid run. At the bottom, a final line was printed, slightly bolder than the rest. Floor 8. Next. Gavin's throat tightened. He glanced at his phone clock. It read 10:47 p.m. The log times were in the future. A soft sound came from behind him in the dark corridor. Cartwheels, faint, squeaking once every few feet as if a second cart rolled slowly over carpet. Gavin turned his phone light toward the sound. The corridor behind him was empty, but the smear on the carpet was longer now, stretching farther toward the stairwell door, as if it had advanced while he was facing the elevator. Gavin stepped back from the open cab, refusing to pick up the clipboard. He gripped the handle of his own cart, knuckles whitening, and began moving toward the stairwell. The squeak of wheels sounded again behind him, closer, and the elevator doors began to close slowly, not fully, stopping midway like hesitant jaws. Gavin moved faster, cartwheels whispering over carpet as he angled away from the elevator bank. The open cab behind him felt like a void that wanted him to step in, the kind of dark that wasn't simply absence of light, but a deliberate withholding. The corridor remained dim. Motion sensors stayed dead. His phone flashlight carved a narrow beam through office doors and glass partitions that reflected only darkness. The smear on the carpet, thin, glossy, and oddly persistent, tracked alongside him like a boundary he wasn't meant to cross. Gavin kept his shoes away from it instinctively, stepping wide as if avoiding a spill could protect him from whatever created it. The stairwell door should have been comforting. It wasn't. As Gavin approached, he realized the smear ended directly at the stairwell threshold, pooling lightly in front of the door, like something had stopped there and waited. The metal push bar gleamed faintly. The door's tiny wired glass window showed the stairwell beyond. Bright fluorescent light, empty steps, predictable lines. Gavin grabbed the push bar and shoved. The door opened, but not smoothly. It resisted for a heartbeat, then gave, as if a hand on the other side had lifted away reluctantly. Cool stairwell air rushed out, smelling of concrete dust and paint. Gavin shoved his cart through and pulled the door closed behind him with a hard, controlled motion. The latch clicked. The sound echoed up the stairwell, traveling higher than it should have. Gavin didn't pause to interpret that. He started down the stairs, one hand gripping his cart handle, the other holding his phone light angled at the steps. His pulse hammered, but his mind stayed practical. Reach the lobby. Find another building employee. Call his supervisor from outside if the building's lines were down. Don't be alone on a dead floor with open elevators. He reached the landing between floors and heard it. A squeak. Not his cart. Not his wheels. His cart was behind him on the landing still. The squeak came from above, one flight up, like rubber wheels shifting gently under weight. Gavin froze, breath tight. He aimed his phone light upward. The stairwell above was empty, but the light caught something on the steps. A thin, wet line running down the center of the stair treads, glistening faintly. It wasn't a puddle. It was a trail, as if something had been pulled along the stairs, leaving a delicate residue in its wake. Gavin swallowed hard and continued down, faster now, pulling his cart with a jerk that made the bucket slosh. The slosh sounded too loud, too alive. Another squeak came from above, then another, closer. Gavin descended another flight, then another. His lungs tightened. His hands started to cramp around the handle. He reached floor 6 and glanced back up. For the first time, something occupied the stairwell. Not a full figure, not a person standing. A cart. A janitorial cart sat on the landing above, angled slightly toward the stairs, as if it had just arrived and stopped. It looked like Gavin's cart in shape and size, but older, more scuffed, more worn. A trash bag hung limp from the side. The mop bucket was dark. The cart didn't move, but it was there. Gavin stared for half a second, then tore his gaze away and kept descending. He didn't want to watch it roll. Watching felt like permission. He wanted the lobby, the exit, the street. The stairwell lights flickered once at floor 4, a brief dimming that made his phone light feel useless. When the fluorescence steadied, Gavin saw the wet trail on the stairs was thicker now. The shine caught the light with a faint metallic edge. He reached floor 2 and nearly lost control of his cart as the wheels hit the landing too hard. He steadied it and shoved down toward the lobby. The lobby stairwell door came into view. Same metal slab, same push bar, same wired glass window. He could see the lobby beyond. Marble floor, wide space, the dead security desk with blue, no-feed screens. Gavin pushed the bar. The door didn't open. He pushed again, harder. Nothing. The door refused with the same fused feeling as the emergency exits in other places he'd worked, the kind of refusal that didn't belong to hinges or latches. Gavin backed up and threw his shoulder into it. The door didn't flex. His pulse spiked into panic. He stepped back and aimed his phone light at the door seam, as if he could see why it wouldn't give. Then the intercom speaker in the stairwell clicked. A single chime, and a voice low and flat. Not the building's normal elevator voice, not a security guard's voice, not anything human in tone. Floor 8. Next. Gavin's blood went cold. He spun around. The janitorial cart above was closer now, lower in the stairwell than before. It sat at the floor 3 landing, angled toward him, as if it had descended while he struggled with the lobby door. Its wheels squeaked faintly, a small sound that carried too far. Gavin's gaze darted to the emergency phone mounted on the wall. Red box, instructions printed in bold, lift handset to connect. He grabbed the handset and lifted. Dead tone, flat, final, absolute. Gavin's breath came in short, sharp pulls. He backed away from the lobby door, cart handle biting into his palm, and moved upward instead because downward was sealed. He climbed, hauling his cart one stair at a time, forcing his legs to work. The cart above moved too. It didn't chase fast. It simply adjusted, keeping pace, staying just far enough away to remain a constant presence. Gavin could hear its wheels squeak at intervals, like a metronome. At floor 5, Gavin reached another stairwell door leading into the office corridor. He shoved it open and burst into the hallway. The corridor was still dark, emergency lit only, but it was different now. The elevator bank down the hall was no longer open. The elevator doors were shut. The call button's ring light pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Gavin pushed his cart toward the elevators anyway. He had to try. He slapped the call button. Nothing. No chime. No mechanical response. The ring light continued to pulse, indifferent. Gavin pulled his phone up and tried to call out. No service. The screen looked dull, as if the building itself dampened signal. A sound came from behind him. Not in the corridor. From the stairwell door he'd just used. A soft squeak, then the slow scrape of wheels over the threshold. Gavin turned. The stairwell door was still shut, but the seam at the bottom darkened slightly, as if something on the other side pressed close. The door handle didn't rattle. The door didn't shake. The pressure simply existed. Gavin shoved his cart into the nearest office suite, swiping his keycard on the lock with shaking hands. The door unlocked. He dragged the cart in and pushed the door shut, throwing the deadbolt. The office was black except for his phone light. Cubicles stood in neat rows like empty pens. Computer monitors sat dark. The air smelled of carpet glue and stale coffee. Gavin moved deeper into the suite, away from glass. He crouched behind a file cabinet, trying to slow his breathing. Outside the office door, no footsteps approached. No rattle came. The silence felt wrong, like a pause between instructions. Then a computer monitor lit up. Not the whole room. Just one screen at the far end of the cubicle rows, a pale rectangle glowing in the dark. The screen displayed a single document window. A checklist. Night shift. Checklist. Gavin's throat tightened. He couldn't see the details from where he crouched, but the bold title was enough. The keyboard beneath it began to type. Not fast, not frantic. Slow, steady keystrokes. Letters appeared on the screen in clean font. Floor 8. Next. Gavin squeezed his eyes shut briefly, then forced them open again. He had to move. Staying meant being processed like the checklist said, like a task. He crawled toward a side hallway he remembered leading to a service ladder and maintenance access. Office towers had those, small locked panels that opened into utility corridors. He found the maintenance door near the copy room and yanked it open with his keycard. The door opened onto a narrow service hall with bare concrete and exposed piping. The air was colder here, the smell metallic and damp. Utility lights hummed overhead, spaced far apart, leaving long stretches of shadow. Gavin pushed his cart into the service hall, then paused. The cart was too wide for some parts. If he took it, it would slow him. If he left it, he'd be without supplies, but faster. He abandoned it. He moved deeper into the service hall, phone lights sweeping. He found a metal ladder bolted to the wall leading up to an access hatch. He climbed. The hatch opened with a reluctant squeal, and Gavin pulled himself into a ceiling space, tight, dusty, full of insulation and wiring. He crawled forward, heart pounding, moving toward where he guessed the lobby area might be, where a maintenance hatch could drop him near the outside doors. Below him, through the ceiling tiles, he heard a faint squeak, then another. The sound traveled through the building's bones, following him. At one point, directly below, he heard the elevator chime. Not the corridor elevator, a service chime deeper, like a freight elevator. Then the flat voice again, muffled but clear enough. Floor 8. Next. Gavin crawled faster, scraping his elbows on insulation. His phone light trembled, battery dropping low. He found a hatch with a maintenance label and pushed it up. It opened into the lobby ceiling. He could see the marble floor below through the gap. Empty lobby. Dead security desk. The front doors beyond. Gavin shoved the hatch wider and lowered himself carefully, dropping down onto the top of the security desk partition. He climbed down to the lobby floor. The lobby was colder than it should have been. The building's air felt stale and held. Gavin ran to the front doors. They didn't open at first. He slapped the push bar, slammed his palm against the sensor area. The doors slid apart. Cold outside air hit his face like a release. Gavin stumbled into the night street, gasping, and didn't stop running until he reached the lit sidewalk near a late-night diner. Only then did his phone regain signal. When his supervisor asked what happened, Gavin told the simplest version. Building systems malfunction, security absent. He felt unsafe. He left. The supervisor didn't argue. The supervisor sounded tired, like Gavin had repeated a story already told. The next morning, the property manager sent an email. No incident recorded. Cameras restored at 6 a.m. No alarms triggered. No unauthorized access. The only irregularity was a missing janitorial cart from storage, an older model scheduled to be disposed of months earlier. Gavin never returned to that tower. Maya took the graveyard shift at the call center because the building was quieter at night and the supervisors were less strict. The work was still work, monotone scripts, angry customers, endless trouble tickets, but midnight brought fewer calls and more breathing room. She could stretch her shoulders, sip lukewarm coffee, and let the fluorescent hum fade into background noise. The call center occupied the second floor of a bland corporate building off a frontage road. By day, the first floor housed a small insurance office and a training room. By night, only the call center remained active. One security guard downstairs, one team lead upstairs, and a handful of agents wearing headsets in a sea of cubicles. Maya's shift started at 11 p.m. The team lead, a woman named Felicia, assigned stations and reviewed the night's metrics. Felicia was the kind of person who treated numbers like personal morality. Tonight, she looked more tired than usual. Her hair was pulled back too tight. Her eyes kept flicking toward the break room hallway, as if she expected movement. Maya took her seat at station 34, logged into the ticketing system, and put on her headset. The first hour was normal. Calls came in sporadically. She followed scripts. She typed notes. The building's HVAC sighed. The vending machines clicked occasionally like they were thinking. At 12:42 a.m., Maya received a call that didn't route correctly. The system typically displayed customer number, region, and issue category. This call popped onto her screen with no number, no region, and the issue category field filled with one word: night shift. Maya hesitated. Calls sometimes glitched. She clicked accept. Silence filled her headset. Not deadline silence. A low, textured silence like an open mic in an empty room. Maya waited for breathing, for background noise, for any sign of a person. A faint clicking came through instead, soft, rhythmic, like a keyboard key being tapped slowly. Maya's eyes shifted to her own keyboard. Her fingers weren't moving. The clicking continued, measured and patient. Maya tried to end the call. The button on her screen didn't respond. The hang-up icon grayed out as if disabled. A new window opened on her monitor without her input, the internal chat client used for supervisor communication. A message appeared in the chat field. Not from Felicia, not from any agent name. No username at all. Just text. Typed one character at a time with the same slow clicking cadence she heard in her headset. Station 12. Maya stared. Station 12 was on the far side of the floor, a row of cubicles near the windowed conference room. Maya didn't sit there. Nobody was assigned there tonight. Felicia had said they were down staff and clustered agents closer to the supervisor desk. Maya's throat tightened. She glanced up over her cubicle wall. The call center floor stretched under dimmed night lighting, long rows of partitions, dark monitors at unused stations, the glow of a few active screens where agents worked quietly. Felicia's desk was visible near the center. Felicia sat there, head down, typing. Maya raised her hand slightly to get Felicia's attention. Felicia didn't look up. Maya's headset still carried the slow clicking steady and close, as if the sound originated from within the system rather than a caller. Another message typed into the chat window. Station 12, active. Maya's pulse climbed. She looked toward Station 12 across the room. From her angle, she could see the top edge of its monitor. It was off. Then it flickered. A pale glow appeared, lighting the cubicle wall faintly. Maya's stomach dropped. The monitor at Station 12 had powered on. No one sat there. Maya could see the chair, empty. The headset hanging on the side hook. The monitor brightness increased, then stabilized. Maya watched, breath shallow, as the screen displayed the call center login page. Then, without anyone touching it, the login page vanished and was replaced by a ticket window, already open, already filled in, like someone had logged in and pulled up a case instantly. Maya couldn't read it from this distance, but she saw the category field highlighted. The same word as her call, night shift. Her headset clicked again, then a new sound layered beneath it, a faint, wet drag, like something moving across carpet slowly. Maya's eyes darted to the aisle between cubicles near Station 12. Nothing moved, but the sound continued in her headset, not through the room air. The drag noise stopped. The chat window on Maya's screen updated with a new message, typed slowly. Go to 12. Maya tried to rip her headset off, but her hands hesitated, caught in the strange paralysis of disbelief. The call timer on her screen was running, counting upward, showing she was still connected. Maya clicked the hang-up icon again. Nothing. Felicia finally looked up across the floor, gaze drifting toward Maya's station, as if she'd sensed something. Maya mouthed for help. Felicia's expression tightened. She stood quickly and moved toward Maya's cubicle, stepping around chairs with careful urgency. As Felicia approached, Maya's monitor flickered. The chat window minimized itself. The ticketing system vanished. Her screen went black for a heartbeat. Then it turned back on, showing a simple message centered in white text on black. Shift transfer. Maya's throat tightened. Felicia reached her station and leaned over, eyes scanning the screen. The headset clicking stopped. The call ended on its own. The message on Maya's screen disappeared and was replaced by the normal desktop, like nothing had happened. Felicia stared at Maya, face tight, and then looked toward Station 12 across the room. Station 12's monitor was still on, and the chair at Station 12, which had been empty moments ago, now looked slightly pulled out, angled as if someone had just stood up. Felicia didn't waste time pretending the situation was normal. She stepped closer to Maya's station, posture rigid, eyes scanning the screen as if it might betray what it had done again. Felicia's badge swung slightly as she leaned, the plastic tapping the desk edge once, an ordinary sound that felt too small for the tension in the air. Maya's hands were shaking beneath the desk. She kept her headset off now, set carefully beside the keyboard like it was contaminated. Across the floor, Station 12's monitor remained lit, a pale rectangle in the dim call center. The chair sat angled outward, as if someone had shifted it and risen. The headset hung on the hook, but the cord looked slightly more extended than it should, like it had been tugged. Felicia motioned for Maya to stay seated. Then Felicia started walking toward Station 12, cutting through the aisles between cubicles with measured steps. Maya stood anyway, unable to remain still, and followed at a distance, careful not to draw attention from other agents who were still taking calls and pretending the night was ordinary. The call center's night lighting made everything look flatter. Rows of partitions became repeating shapes. Empty stations became dark pits of monitors and chairs. The overhead HVAC exhaled in short bursts, too frequent, like the building was regulating itself against something. Felicia reached Station 12 and stopped just outside the cubicle, not stepping in yet. She leaned slightly, eyes on the screen. The monitor displayed a ticket window. The category field read Night Shift, and beneath it, the issue description field was filled with a single line, Shift Transfer Complete. Felicia's jaw tightened. She reached in and touched the mouse. The cursor moved. That alone should have been comforting, proof of control. But as Felicia moved the cursor toward the top right corner to close the window, the cursor stopped responding. It froze mid-screen like it had hit invisible glue. Felicia tried the keyboard. Nothing changed. The ticket window refreshed on its own with a soft blink, as if it had been updated by a system action. A new line appeared in the description field, typed one character at a time, so slow and deliberate that both women watched it form. Supervisor present. Maya felt her stomach drop. Felicia didn't step back. She stared at the words as if refusing to give them meaning. On Maya's phone in her pocket, the vibrations started. One buzz, then another, then a third in quick succession. She pulled it out. No signal bars, no notifications she recognized, but her phone had opened the internal work chat app on its own, the one tied to the company Wi-Fi. A typing indicator pulsed in a blank conversation that didn't list a user. Maya's breath tightened. Felicia glanced at Maya's phone, then back at Station 12. The typing indicator on the phone stopped. A message arrived. Stay on floor. Maya looked up, eyes wide, scanning the call center. No one else reacted. Other agents stared at their screens, muted voices spilling into headsets. To them, the night was still a routine, still measurable, still safe enough to ignore. Felicia reached beneath the desk at Station 12 and unplugged the computer's power strip with a hard yank. The monitor went black instantly. For half a second, Maya felt relief, pure and sharp. Then the monitor turned back on, not slowly, not with a boot screen. It snapped to life with the same pale glow as before, the ticket window still open, the same lines still present. Felicia's face tightened further. She unplugged the network cable next, fingers moving fast and precise. The screen didn't change, the cursor didn't change. It was as if the machine had decided its connection didn't require wires. Maya's phone vibrated again. A new message arrived, same blank sender. Do not cut. Felicia stared at the message on Maya's phone, then looked back at Station 12. Her posture changed subtly. Not fear, not surrender, but a kind of calculating caution, like she had suddenly realized the building was watching the choices, not just the people. Felicia made a sharp gesture for Maya to return to her station. Maya hesitated. Felicia repeated the gesture, firmer. Maya obeyed, walking backward a few steps before turning and moving quickly down the aisle. She felt exposed under the overhead lights, like any corner of the room could suddenly become the focal point. When Maya reached her cubicle, her own monitor flickered. Not off, just a brief dimming like the brightness had dipped under a wave. The headset on her desk clicked once, just the faintest sound, like plastic settling. Maya didn't touch it. She sat, hands in her lap, forcing herself to keep her breathing quiet. Across the floor, Felicia remained by Station 12. Maya watched from the distance through gaps between partitions. Felicia picked up the Station 12 headset slowly, holding it away from her ear as if it might bite. She didn't put it on. She set it on the desk, then reached for the desk phone used for internal calls. She lifted the receiver. Maya couldn't hear what Felicia heard, but she saw Felicia stiffen. The receiver hovered at Felicia's ear, and her eyes went unfocused for a moment, the way people looked when they were listening to something that didn't match expectation. Felicia set the receiver down carefully, like setting down a fragile object. Then she stepped back from Station 12 and scanned the floor. Felicia's gaze went past the agents, past the break room, past the hall that led to restrooms and the stairwell. Her eyes fixed on the far end of the call center, where a door labeled server room sat. Normally locked, accessed only by IT. The server room door was open, only a few inches, a black wedge of space, the same kind of opening that invited attention without offering clarity. Maya's mouth went dry. She hadn't noticed the door earlier, and she sat with a clear view of that hall. It had been shut. Felicia walked toward it. Maya stood without thinking and followed again, staying farther back this time. She didn't want to be near Felicia when the building decided to communicate again, but she didn't want to be alone either. They reached the hall outside the server room door. The air was cooler here, conditioned for equipment. The sound of fans inside the server closet was loud, a constant roar that made it difficult to hear anything subtle. Felicia pushed the door open wider. The server room was small, lined with racks of equipment, blinking lights, cable bundles, a wall-mounted monitor used for diagnostics. The monitor was on. It displayed the call routing dashboard, but the dashboard wasn't showing live calls. It showed a single queue highlighted in red. Night shift under it, one active call session. Station 12, transferred. Felicia's shoulders tightened. She stepped closer to the diagnostic monitor and reached for the keyboard attached to the rack. The keys began to type on their own. Not fast. Slow and deliberate. The same cadence Maya had heard through her headset earlier. A line appeared on the screen beneath the queue. Next transfer. Supervisor. Maya's blood went cold. Felicia backed away from the keyboard immediately, hands raised slightly like she wanted to show she wasn't participating. The server fans roared, then dipped in pitch, then roared again, as if the room's temperature had changed suddenly. Maya looked at the open door behind them and felt the hall beyond seem longer. The call center lights flickered once. Not a full outage, just a blink, enough to make the world stutter. When the light steadied, something new stood at the end of the hall outside the server room. A rolling office chair, not near any desk, not parked, positioned dead center in the hallway, facing them. No one had pushed it. No one had moved past them. The chair sat as if it had always belonged there. The chair rolled forward an inch. Maya's breath caught. Felicia stepped in front of her instinctively, arms slightly out as if she could shield Maya from a chair. The chair rolled again. Another inch. It stopped. Maya's phone vibrated again in her pocket. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. A new message appeared in the blank chat. Sit. Maya's throat tightened. She glanced at Felicia. Felicia's expression was hard, controlled, and extremely tired. Like this wasn't the first time she'd seen a knight try to assign a seat. Felicia stepped backward, pulling Maya with her, out of the server room and into the call center floor again. The chair in the hallway remained, not chasing quickly, just holding position like a checkpoint. Felicia guided Maya toward the center of the floor where other agents sat. More eyes, more bodies, more normal noise. Maya sat at her station again, hands clenched in her lap. Felicia returned to her supervisor desk and opened the manager console on her computer. Her fingers moved fast, typing shutdown commands for the call routing system. Maya watched the screen from afar, seeing windows flash and close. Felicia was fighting the night with procedure. Then every monitor on the floor blinked at once. Not off, not dead, just a synchronized refresh, like a system-wide update. For a brief moment, every screen displayed the same message, centered in plain white text on black. Shift transfer. Then the message vanished, replaced by normal desktops and call scripts, as if nothing had happened. The phones rang again. Agents continued working, some frowning briefly at the glitch, then shrugging it off as IT trouble. Maya's headset remained silent, but Station 12's monitor stayed on. Maya stared at it across the room, unable to look away. The chair at Station 12 was still angled outward, waiting. The ticket window remained open, the same night shift category visible even from far away. At 2:58 a.m., the building's main lights brightened slightly, an automatic change as the night moved closer to morning. At the same moment, Station 12's monitor went black. The chair slid gently back under the desk, as if returned to its proper place. And Maya's call log updated with one final entry from the earlier glitch call, now filled in with a number it hadn't shown before. The number was internal, not customer-facing. A station extension, 002. Maya didn't finish her shift. She left when her break hit, walked out the front door without looking back, and never returned to that call center again. Felicia quit 2 weeks later without explanation. A month after that, the company closed the building's call center floor due to system instability and relocated operations elsewhere. The official report listed recurring network errors and equipment failures. No report mentioned the night shift queue that occasionally reappeared on the diagnostic dashboard, highlighted in red, with no caller name, waiting for a station assignment.